What the hell was that? Samuel thought, as the echo of the explosion still rang in his ears, vibrating through bone and memory alike. A violent reminder that freedom was never given, only taken, and usually paid for in blood. The opportunity of a lifetime. Hector's words lingered like smoke, thick and suffocating, wrapping round his mind as tightly as the prison walls that had held him for so many lost years. Years that had blurred into a single endless night of stone, sweat, and regret. The key, small and unassuming, had felt heavier than iron in his palm. Heavier than chains, heavier than guilt, because it carried with it something far more dangerous than captivity ever had. Hope, Samuel, Hector had said. Are you ready to seek your fortune? And in that moment, despite the gunfire, despite the screams, despite the smell of burning oil and fear, Samuel had answered yes. Not because he believed in treasure, not because he trusted Hector, but because he believed in one thing and one thing only. The possibility of seeing the sunrise as a free man again. Holy hell, he had whispered when he saw the starting position. The chaos unfolding exactly as planned. Guards running, prisoners rioting, the entire world cracking open just wide enough for two desperate men to slip through. How long have you had this? Samuel had asked, and Hector had smiled that cold, patient smile of a man who always knew more than he said. Since the moment I set foot in this place, he had answered. And Samuel realized then that Hector had never been a prisoner. Not really. He had been a predator waiting for the cage door to open. Samuel, keep up, Hector had urged, his voice calm even as bullets tore through the air. Because hesitation was death, and Samuel had no intention of dying in that place. Jesus, these men are sadistic, Samuel had muttered, watching the guards fall, watching the balance of power collapse in seconds. And Hector had replied with chilling certainty, we are doing the world a favor, as if violence were justice and escape were mercy. Here, you'll need this, Hector had said, pressing a gun into Samuel's hand, the metal cold and unfamiliar, a relic of a life he thought he had left behind. You'll remember how to use it? Hector had asked, and Samuel had nodded. Though he wasn't sure if he remembered the mechanics of the weapon or the man he had been when he last held one. It will come back to me, he had said, and he wasn't sure if that was a promise or a warning. You do that, and you'll start a riot, Samuel had warned when Hector explained the next step, and Hector had simply said, exactly, because chaos was not a side effect, it was the plan. I've got to know, Samuel had begun. But the question never finished, swallowed by the roar of freedom as walls fell and destinies shifted. The plan is working, Hector had said later, calm as ever, and Samuel had answered, yeah, I see. Though what he really saw was the cost, the bodies, the price that would never be repaid. So now what? Samuel had asked. Because freedom was terrifying in its uncertainty, and Hector had answered not with reassurance, but with orders. Samuel, get behind me, because survival was still not guaranteed. What? Why? Samuel had protested, and Hector had snapped, just do it, because sometimes trust was the only weapon left. Are you all right? Samuel had asked when the dust settled, and Hector had said yes. But Samuel knew better, because men like Hector were never all right. They were simply unbroken. In a minute, Hector had told him, we will either be free or dead. Are you ready? And Samuel realized there was no difference anymore, because living without freedom was just another form of dying. When the final barrier fell and the open world stretched before them, Samuel felt something he had not felt in years. Possibility, fragile and dangerous. You're safe now, Hector had said later, offering him water beneath the open sky. and Samuel had hesitated, because safety felt like a lie. But he drank anyway, the water washing away dust, but not doubt. "What's next for you?" Hector had asked, and Samuel had laughed, a broken, uncertain sound. "What is next?" he repeated, as if the future were a language he no longer spoke. "I'm going to take a bath," he said. "I'm going to sleep in a real bed. Maybe find a warm body beside me. Maybe remember what it means to be human. And then, after all that, I'm going to find my brother. Because some promises survive, even prison." Hector had nodded, but his eyes never softened, because he was already thinking ahead. Already calculating, already owning Samuel's future in ways Samuel did not yet understand. "How long will it take you to retrieve Avery's treasure?" Hector had asked. And Samuel had hesitated, because truth was dangerous, and lies were currency. "I don't know," he had said. "I need time." And Hector had smiled the smile of a man who sold time but never gave it away. "6 months," Samuel had said, and Hector had laughed softly. "People always ask for more time than they need." He had said 3 months. 3 months to find the treasure. 3 months to repay a debt that could never truly be repaid. And Samuel had agreed. Because what choice did he have? Because freedom with chains was still freedom compared to a cell. But Hector had leaned closer then, his voice low and certain. "If you run, if you hide, if you betray me, I will find you, and death will not be mercy." And Samuel had believed him, because men like Hector did not make threats, they made promises. When Hector left him alone beneath the rising sun, Samuel had felt the weight of his freedom settle on his shoulders, heavier than prison walls, because now he had something to lose. And when he finally found his brother again, when he finally told him everything, he realized the escape had never really ended. It had only changed shape, because now they were chasing a ghost named Avery. Chasing secrets hidden inside crosses and lies hidden inside men. Chasing a treasure that promised salvation but whispered ruin. And when Samuel said, "We're not buying it, we're stealing it," he knew he wasn't just talking about the cross, he was talking about his life, his past, his future. Because once you become a thief, you never really stop stealing, you just change what you're willing to risk. And this time, what he was risking wasn't just his life, it was his brother, his soul, and the fragile hope that somewhere at the end of this path, freedom would finally mean something more than survival. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling the morning sun burn away the haze of night. And yet, despite the light, he could not shake the shadows of what had happened. He could not ignore the sound of gunfire echoing in his memory, or the faint, metallic tang of blood that seemed permanently etched into his senses. The trail of Avery's treasure was supposed to be straightforward, a simple line from one clue to another, yet each step forward seemed to twist reality into something far more sinister. Something that made him question every ally, every instinct, every breath he took. Rafe had already proven that greed could bend men into monsters. That even those who once claimed righteousness could turn corrupt when wealth called their name. And Samuel had learned that lessons like this were often delivered in screams and fire, not words. Moran's endless digging around St. Dismas Cathedral had been a warning to anyone who dared follow the same path. Proof that obsession was its own prison, and that treasure, even when real, could become a curse. Samuel sifted through the images and records he had scavenged online, amazed at the sheer amount of information at one's fingertips. How history and legend collided into a single stream of data, yet still, he had to remember to separate fact from illusion, to distinguish what was real from what men wanted him to believe was real. Because, in treasure hunting, deception was the constant companion, and trust was often the knife at your back. When he held the St. Dismas cross in his hands, the weight of it was more than metal and stone. It was history. It was sacrifice. It was Avery's own fingerprint on a world that had tried to swallow her secrets whole. It was intact, a perfect testament to what had been lost, a map without a map, a guide without directions. And Samuel understood that finding the treasure would not be a simple matter of following clues. It would require cunning, courage, and a willingness to defy the laws, both of men and of morality. He thought of Hector often, the man who had freed him, yet bound him with a promise, whose presence haunted the peripheries of Samuel's mind like a spectre, reminding him that freedom was conditional and that failure would not be tolerated. Samuel's nights were restless, filled with visions of gun barrels, locked doors, and the faces of men who had once held the power of life and death over him. Yet he pushed on, because in every shadow, in every alley and archive, he knew there was a path forward, a thread that could be followed if he had the patience and the nerve to see it. The Rossi estate auction loomed like a colossus ahead, its gates guarded by men with the same merciless precision that had defined Alcazar's operation. And Samuel realized that this would not merely be a theft, it would be a symphony of strategy, misdirection, and courage, where one wrong step would not merely ruin a plan but end lives. He could not ask Charlie Cutter for help. He could not rely on anyone else. Because trust was a commodity far more expensive than gold in this game, and he alone had to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. Money, Samuel thought bitterly, was a tool, but even the wealth he might borrow or steal would never be enough to secure this treasure without skill, cunning, and a tolerance for danger that bordered on recklessness. Every interaction, every step, every glance needed to be calculated, because a single mistake, a single reveal of intent, could bring Hector's wrath crashing down upon him. And death, he had learned, was far less merciful than imprisonment. And yet, Samuel felt a thrill coursing through him, a fire of purpose that had long lain dormant under years of fear, despair, and loss. He would do this, not for wealth, not for glory, but for closure, for a sense that his life could be reclaimed from the shadows, that the legacy of Avery, of her ingenuity, her cunning, and her courage, would not be buried beneath men's greed. As he planned each move, he imagined the estate, the auction hall, the elegant men in tailored suits, the careful movements of guards and bidders alike. And he visualized the chaos that would erupt when strategy met opportunity. Every possible scenario ran through his mind, every contingency noted, every risk assessed. And yet, even as the plan took shape, the uncertainty remained a constant shadow over his calculations. Samuel had become a chess player in a game with no clear rules, the board stretching infinitely, with enemies hidden behind every move and allies uncertain at best. The treasure was more than gold. It was a statement, a proof of skill, of wit, of endurance, and Samuel knew that to take it, he would have to embody every lesson life had forced him to learn. Every scar, every scarred memory, every hard-won instinct that had allowed him to survive so far. All right, let's talk about the perfect heist. Not the messy, guns-blazing kind you see in movies, but something elegant, something with style. And for that, you need the perfect target. Enter the Rossi estate, a sprawling mansion tucked away in the Italian countryside. Home to more than just fine wine and old money. It's home to the Celestial Tear, a legendary diamond cross said to be carved from a fallen star. It's been in the Rossi family for generations, and they're not exactly known for their generosity. The current head of the family, Isabella Rossi, is a formidable woman. They call her the Iron Orchid for a reason. She's sharp, she's paranoid, and her estate is a fortress. But every fortress has a flaw. And I, Samuel, am a specialist in finding them. This isn't my first rodeo, but the Rossi job. This one is different. It's personal. The celestial tier isn't just a payday. It's a piece of history, and some histories need to be rewritten. My first step, as always, is reconnaissance. You can't just walk up to a place like the Rossi estate. So, I went in disguise. Not a clever fake moustache, but something better, a uniform. I posed as a sommelier, hired for Isabella's annual harvest gala. It gave me a legitimate reason to be there, to walk the halls, to observe. And observe I did. The estate is a marvel of old-world architecture and modern security. The grounds are patrolled by guards with earpieces, but they're predictable, following set patterns. The real challenge is inside. The walls are lined with pressure plates. The windows have magnetic reed switches, and every significant hallway is monitored by laser grids. The kind of stuff you'd expect from a paranoid billionaire. The cross itself is housed in the family's private gallery, a room that's essentially a vault within a vault. It sits on a pedestal in the center of the room, protected by a glass case with its own set of alarms. The floor around it is a pressure-sensitive weight sensor. Step on it without disarming it, and the entire wing goes into lockdown. Steel shutters, tear gas, the whole 9 yards. It's a beautiful, deadly puzzle. My week as a wine expert was invaluable. I learned the staff's routines, the shift changes for the guards, and most importantly, the estate's blind spots. There's a small service corridor behind the kitchen that isn't on the official blueprints. The security company that installed the system in the 90s missed it. It's a relic from the original construction, used by servants centuries ago. It's my way in. But getting in is only half the battle. The gallery is the real prize. The laser grid in the main hall leading to it is state-of-the-art. It shifts its pattern every 60 seconds. You can't just time it. You need to know the sequence. So, how do you get the sequence? You don't. You bypass it. During the gala, I accidentally spilled a tray of very expensive red wine near the main control panel for the East Wing security. While the staff scrambled to clean up the mess and I profusely apologized to a furious Isabella, I had about 10 seconds. In that time, I attached a micro-repeater to the panel's data port. It's a tiny device that wirelessly transmits the system's diagnostic data to a receiver. For the past 2 weeks, it's been feeding me everything I need to know, including the algorithm for the laser grid. It's not random. It's a complex mathematical sequence, and I've cracked it. Now, for the gallery itself, the pressure-sensitive floor is the main event. You can't step on it. Period. So, I won't. My plan involves a custom-built drone, small enough to fit in my backpack. Once I'm in the gallery, I'll deploy it. It has a high-frequency sonic emitter. The glass case protecting the cross is designed to withstand impact, but it's vulnerable to specific resonant frequencies. A sustained, targeted sonic pulse will create microfractures, shattering the case without triggering the impact sensors. It's delicate work. Too much power, and I set off the alarms. Too little, and it won't break. Once the case is shattered, the drone's secondary function kicks in, a retractable magnetic claw. The cross itself is gold, non-magnetic. But the clasp, a later addition, is platinum elcavolt. It's just enough for the claw to get a grip. The drone will lift the cross, fly it back over the pressure plate, and deliver it right into my hands. It's a surgical strike, No mess, no fuss. But a plan is only as good as its weakest link. And in this case, the weakest link is time. The entire operation, from entering the service corridor to exiting the grounds, has to be completed in under 18 minutes. That's the window between the midnight guard shift change and when the system runs its hourly diagnostic check. If I'm still inside when that check runs, the system will flag the open data port from my repeater, and the whole estate will light up like a Christmas tree. So, the gear is ready. The drone, codenamed the Hummingbird, is calibrated. I have a custom-made grappling launcher to get over the outer wall and a set of tools to disable the magnetic lock on the service door. My suit is made of a non-reflective radar-absorbent material to help me slip past any roaming security bots Isabella might have forgotten to mention. Every detail has been meticulously planned. I've run the simulation in my head 1,000 times. Every step, every second is accounted for. Tonight is the night. The weather forecast predicts a thunderstorm, which is perfect. The rain and wind will help mask my movements and could cause minor, temporary disruptions to the estate's external sensors. It's the little bit of chaos I need to complement my careful order. Isabella Rossi is asleep in her bed, confident that her treasure is safe. She believes her walls are impenetrable, her systems unbeatable. She thinks the celestial tear is hers forever. But history, like treasure, has a way of changing hands. And tonight, I'm not just a thief. I'm an agent of change. The Rossi chapter of the Cross's story is about to end. A new one is about to begin. Wish me luck. I'm going in. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll stick around to see how this story unfolds. Hit that subscribe button.